Love talking ball with this guy. One of the best. What he has turned himself into at ESPN is an A-lister. He is none other than Dan Orlovsky back here on the program. How are you, Dan?
Hey, bud. I'm good. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am great. What's your evaluation of Trey Lance? Let's just jump right in with both feet. What do you got for me?
Yeah, it's obviously unknown, right? I think the discouraging thing, Rich, is twofold. One, he's 23 years old right now, and I would sit here and say, like, those are really paramount years from that age of, like, 17 to 23 to 24-ish of growth and development quarterback-wise. I think they're very important, and it gives you such an important foundation to what you can become at that spot, both physically and mechanically and, football intelligence-wise. And he's missed so much football time during that, like, 6 or 7 year period. And I think the second thing is, while he's missed that, and that's an unfortunate reality for him, like, even the moments that he has been on the field, there's still not much, if any, like, development or growth. The throwing motion is still long. The back leg, I remember when he was coming out of the draft, Rich, I did this, this breakdown of his back leg when he gets to the top of his drop and how it's basically straight, and instead of being, like, flexed, and then almost like if you're thinking a boxer, a position of power off of the ground. That's still there. Still, holding on to the football and waiting for guys to get open instead of anticipating for them to get open, and maybe not seeing defenders, the way that you would hope you would see when it comes to certain coverages. So, there's this multitude of stuff that you sit there and go, hasn't played a ton, and when he has, there hasn't been much growth or development.
So clearly, the third rail question I'm going to ask you is this Kyle Shanahan's fault that everything you just say, mechanics-wise and instinct-wise, has not been improved over the last couple of years, or injuries have created the issue for him, or he just can't? Like, what's the third rail answer here?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit. It's probably more so can't and the injury. There's only so much that we could pin on Kyle. Like, Kyle's responsibility isn't strictly the quarterback. Rich, I'll go back to him, man. Like, I was one of those people that was dead set on it being Mac Jones. I never kind of saw that this was the ideal marriage between coach and then quarterback. And also, even when he was the guy, and brief period last year, Kyle didn't use him the way that I thought, okay, maybe Kyle's he's going to go back to the RG3 type of offense and utilize him as a real big-time running back. That didn't show itself much. So, who's to blame? These are always tough conversations because you hear about the young man and everyone raves about the human. Mm-hmm. And but that doesn't mean that everyone's meant to be a legit superstar franchise starting quarterback in the NFL. So it's probably more so maybe he's just not that person, and the injuries, we'll see if I'm wrong on being that person.
Well, again, if Shanahan is the quarterback whisperer and the guy who can develop him best, then maybe Lance just showed his humanity by forcing his way out or saying, I want to leave, because how's he going to get any of the reps that's required in Dallas, right? I mean, like Cooper Rush, you could make the argument is the best backup quarterback in the league. Dan.
No, that's kind of the interesting aspect of, well, if you're Dallas, they're not giving up a fourth-round pick for nothing. You're giving up a fourth-round pick in hopes that this young man gets on the field somehow, some way, and provides value to your organization, while also hoping that he doesn't play because Dak plays so well and is so healthy. So I think for Trey, it was he had to get out of San Francisco because he wasn't going to practice there. Maybe maybe Dallas doesn't view Cooper Rush the same way that other people do. Maybe we're looking at Cooper Rush to the advantage of how kind of risk averse he was last year and how well the defense played in his 4 starts. But at least it gives him a fresh start and a new build with new people to put their own daily opinion upon what type of player he is or could be.
So then what's your evaluation of Dak Prescott? Let's just jump straight into that one too, Dan.
Yeah, I think so. Like, in relation to the whole Trey Lance edition, one, goodbye San Francisco. Two, I think it's smart by Dallas. Fourth round pick for, a guy who was 3 years ago the number 3 pick of the draft and a starter last year at this time. I think it's super stupid to not tell Dak Prescott or Mike McCarthy about it. I'm not sitting here telling people that Jerry Jones needs to ask their permission. It's his football team. I think you've heard me say this, Rich. Like, okay, so when and basically every guy who was in the NFL starts playing quarterback as a kid, one of the first things we get taught is, hey, leadership. Everyone's going to follow your lead. They're going to do what you tell them to do. This is your team. This is your offense. So you go years and years and years of hearing that, building that, and then it becomes very personal to you. Like, yes, this is my football team. This is my offense. And that's how guys in many ways become great leaders at that position. So for them to make this move and directly affect Dak Prescott's day-to-day work by adding or subtracting to his room, it goes completely against everything that we know about the position. And I'm not sitting here saying Trey Lance is a threat to Dak Prescott. I don't think he is. I don't think that Dak Prescott needs any type of extra motivation. What I'm sitting here saying is like, dude, it's so dumb to just make that move and not give the guy who, one, has $60 million contract over his head for next year that everyone knows they're not going to pay him $60 million. Two, has missed 17 games in the last 3 years. Three, is coming off of his worst year as a pro when he threw 17 interceptions. And four, the last 2 playoff losses, he's only scored a combined 29 points. So like that all being a part of the conversation, just give the guy a heads up just because he's your franchise quarterback.
Dan Orlovsky of ESPN bringing it, as always, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So I know you've already probably gotten through this with Greeny sitting next to you on Get Up. I don't know if he's walking taller, if he smells differently, if there's a certain jet pheromone that's coming out of him right now. I do know watching Rodgers just stroll on the field and have a command at the position. That's first ballot Hall of Fame command at the position was just bizarre to me. It's just like, wow, that is the jet symbol on the side of his helmet. When he started playing, though, tell me what you saw. Tell me what you saw.
Just excellence. And I'll go really deep here into some football nerd stuff. Like, the little things that he does that are so next level that only a person like him, I would say that maybe him and Patrick are the 2 guys that could do it, and I would probably put him even in his own category because of the experience. The little things that he does on a play-to-play basis are going to have such a tremendous butterfly effect in a positive way. Like, Rich, if you go to the first, and I broke this down and Get Up and I put it on social media, like if you go to the first pass of the game, the one that he just takes the snap and throws it right to Garrett Wilson, if you don't throw that ball at or like leading him upfield and on his left shoulder, that plays a 4-yard gain. Great, cool, thumbs up. But if you throw it excellent and in a little way, and you throw Garrett just a step upfield and on his left shoulder, he then gets one-on-one with the corner and it's an 11-yard gain. Or if you go to the bootleg, the 2 bootlegs that he has, and if you're a film junkie like me, go watch this. He peeks before he gets the snap. He peeks the backside to see what the defensive end is going to do to know, can he get completely around the edge on the bootleg or does he have to like pull up? Both times pulls up. But the touchdown pass, you can see he takes the snap and just holds it for just a fraction of a second to let Garrett win at the line of scrimmage so then he could feel what type of throw to make. Like those little things that so naked eyes, like so many people are going to overlook because they haven't been trained to see it. They're like those impacts are going to be so profound on this offense for everyone. It's going to be really cool to watch it play itself out.
If I could light a cigarette right now, I would. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Dan,
it's going to be cool, man.
It just makes me feel like Garrett Wilson is his new favorite 17, right? I don't. We're going to have our Overreaction Monday segment in about an hour from now. I don't want to overreact to this because things always happen with trapdoors with the Jets, but this just does feel real to me, just watching even 2 drives on Saturday.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a bigger fan than Garrett Wilson than I. Rich, again, when he was coming out of the draft and Jackson was picking number 1, I said I would take him with the first pick, Garrett Wilson. I think he's that tremendous of a wide receiver. Super talented, and he's got that relationship and connection with Aaron that is very unique. I'm not putting it at Devontae's level out of respect for Devontae and what he and Aaron had. But I think also this, right? Like everyone continues to say this offensive line. This defense is going to give up 2 touchdowns a game. So if we just took, and I know it's not, completely a straight line comparison, but just for fun, the Packers, they scored 22 points per game. The Jets scored 22 points per game, and if you just take what they were last year, they'll be 11-6 this year. Their defense gave up 18 points a game. In Aaron Rodgers' career, okay, let's say the Jets defense just stays as is and gives up 18 points a game this year. In Aaron Rodgers' career, when his defense gives up 18 points or less, he's 80-10. They're going to be really good this year.
Dan Orlovsky here on the Rich Eisen Show. A few more minutes left with him. Okay, so give me the quarterback that's going to make the biggest leap this year. Doesn't have to be year 1 or year 2, although it can be. Could be, I'll just throw out a couple. Even Geno. Deshaun Watson looked pretty sharp in his final preseason game for the Browns. I'm giving you a whole bunch of options. Give me the quarterback that's going to take the biggest leap this year.
Trevor Lawrence. And it's a pretty easy answer for me, Trevor Lawrence. Threefold. One, because of what he did at the back half of last season. I'll share a story with you. So we called the Jacksonville, Denver, London game, me and Lewis, over in London.
Yep.
And sitting with Doug Peterson. I think this was probably like week 5 of the season last year, something around there. And sitting with Doug Peterson, we're talking about Trevor, and he kind of shares this story that when he first got there in last year's offseason and even in training camp, Trevor was so mentally broken, like so just beat down, that he would throw an interception. And he immediately would run over to like Doug Peterson and stand essentially shoulder to shoulder with his head down but not make eye contact to him. Almost like you would see, a dog go to its owner after, doing something that it shouldn't, or a kid to their parent, like knowing, oh my gosh, I messed up, I made a mistake, and I know I'm in trouble. And Doug Peterson was telling us, like, he would tell Trevor, being, what are you doing? And Trevor would be almost intimidated to interact with them. And how much Doug had to coach that out of him. Coach you don't fear mistakes. You don't fear doing something wrong. Like, you just go and be in attack mode. And I think that took half of the season to show itself. And then that last half, Trevor was so good. And that was mainly because of the way that they coached that out of Trevor. 2, Calvin Ridley is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is going to remind everybody, why he was trending to a top 5 wide receiver. If you watch their preseason game this past week, that he throws him a double move versus pressure, and Trevor throws the ball, and the defensive back is 5 yards behind Calvin Ridley. That's how much trust he has in him right now. And then I think this offense is going to be really, really dynamic when it comes to being able to run the football with Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. And that obviously is going to get such favorable situations passing-wise for Trevor. And I think he's going to play really big-time football.
And I saw on Get Up this morning, Dan, you all chopped up which contender needs Jonathan Taylor the most. But to me, the Colts need him the most, period. And I know they're not technically a contender, but they need him the most. Yeah. We saw what the Raiders did with Josh Jacobs, and obviously the summer began with Saquon getting a little bit more than the franchise tag. And I understand Taylor has a contract, but what would you counsel the Colts to do here, or Jonathan Taylor? Just give me your 2 cents on this very thorny subject, the last one before the season, it appears, in the NFL.
Totally agree in that premise. If you're Indianapolis, and really like the now and the future is about Anthony, right? It is so important to make sure that you hit on that pick and he becomes Anthony Richardson, their quarterback, what you hope he's going to become. And this is a team that's not great on the perimeter right now. You know, Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. are good, not great. So if you're Indy and you know how important it is to get Anthony reps and the style of offense you want to play, you need Jonathan Taylor's talent. You need his maturity and his leadership around Anthony Richardson. And while they're not contenders, that your future is going to be so dependent on what he becomes. And I think the cost of keeping Jonathan Taylor around is so worth it in comparison to the cost of taking Jonathan Taylor away from a player like Anthony Richardson. So I don't know if it gets fixed without some type of financial, alteration or whatnot, but if I was Indy, I would want to make sure that I have that type of player and leader and performer around my young quarterback.
Last one for you, Dan. I don't know if I'm going to have you on before the beginning of the season. I did this with RG3 last week. I know it's early, but preseason's in the books. Who do you have going to the Super Bowl in Vegas this year as we're talking?
Yeah, so I say San Francisco 49ers out of the NFC, and I will say, now, Rich, I'm saying this with a caveat.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to pretend that Chris Jones plays this year for 15 plus or so games. I'll say Kansas City. My addendum is this, or amendment, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
If he misses the potential 8 games that he's kind of hinted at missing, I don't see Kansas City getting to the Super Bowl. And if it's not them, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills.
Why?
I think Buffalo is being slept on as a football team that is being an afterthought. Last year, even in the midst of some pretty significant injuries on both their safeties, were in the final 8. And I think that because of the addition of Dalton Kincaid, the commitment to running the football on a more consistent basis, Tre'Davious back healthy and both those 2 safeties back healthy, I still think this is as good a football team as we have in the NFL.
All right. I appreciate the candor right there. And then, speaking of Kansas City and Mahomes, I know the comparisons through the roof already. I mean, Caleb Williams, did you see that one play he made over the weekend in USC?
Yeah. Rich, I said this. If he doesn't take another snap, he's at worst the second pick of the NFL draft. At worst. Because I think Drake May from North Carolina is going to have a part of that conversation. Caleb is like watching – it's like watching Patrick, Josh Allen, and Lamar all at the same time.
Really?
Because, Josh is such a natural thrower. It's effortless. That's how Caleb is. Patrick is so jaw-dropping talented. He does stuff that you shouldn't. And Lamar is just electric anytime the ball is in his hands. I feel that way about Caleb. And I know he said he doesn't know what he's going to do with the draft next year. Respectfully, come on. He's the only question is can he go win the Heisman again? Really, that's the question that's left.
Well, I mean, maybe it's a money thing, right? I mean, apparently he's making $3 million sitting there in USC. I know what a first overall contract is in the NFL, but I mean, he picked that ball up off the ground from the Coliseum like it had a handle, and then he just kept his head upfield.
60 yards.
That was unbelievable. Kid may make a wild play every week, or 2, and the hype's just only going to get bigger, I think. So I'm just glad that he's going to be out in the NFL before he joins the Big Ten, so my Wolverines don't have to deal with him.
Rich, this is why last year when the Bears had the number 1 pick,
mm-hmm.
I was sitting there saying, like, if you are the Panthers and you don't trade for the number 1 pick, you're crazy. And everyone was like, well, next year, just so everyone's very clear, you are not trading up to the number 1 and number 2 slots next year. Those kids are going to get taken. Those kids are going to go 1-2. So if you didn't do it last year, it's going to be a disappointment because it's going to cost you double what it costed the Panthers.
Well, I hear you, and I'll make this prediction as I send you on into your Monday, Dan, is there will be sometime in November, I don't know which show it'll be that you're on, because you're on so many on ESPN, but there will be a conversation in an ideas meeting there in Bristol or on the road to have a conversation about which team that is not doing very well in the NFL that does have an established quarterback would go ahead and Josh Rosen that person for either Drake May or Caleb Williams. That's coming. That conversation is coming, without a doubt. It's coming,
Totally agree.
So look out for that, and I look out for more of my calls and texts Greatly appreciate the call here, Dan. You be well.
You're a good man, brother. Enjoy.
Right back at you. That's Dan Orlovsky, everybody, from the worldwide leader in sports, a must-follow on the internets. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.